Hello everyone, welcome back to Long Switch Academy and you are watching our Salesforce Flows for Beginners course. I'm your host Shubham Prajapati. Today we will be talking about Salesforce Screen Flow and we will also guide you through the step-by-step process of creating your first Salesforce Screen Flow. By end of this episode, you will be able to build your own interactive flows to guide your users through series of steps. So this video is going to be very exciting. Stay tuned till the very end and we hope that you will take some valuable lesson out of it. If you haven't subscribed to our Long Switch Academy yet, do subscribe to it now. Click on that notification bell icon so that you never miss an update from us. So let's begin. Let's get started with creating our first Salesforce screen flow. If you have watched our previous episode where we talked about different types of Salesforce flows, where we have explained you in detail what are Salesforce screen flows. In this episode, when we will be creating our first screen flow, before we even start creating our screen flow, it is important to understand why Salesforce screen flows are used and what are the use cases in which we should consider them. For just highlighting the key purposes or key situations in which we should be using the Salesforce screen flows, I have created a slide where I am showcasing you some key bullet points, and the first bullet point goes like this: the screen flow should be used for the processes which requires user interaction, meaning that you should be opting for screen flows where you want your users to interact with some screens or some forms to fill out some information. Like they say, these screen flows display screens to the user where they can collect the information from the users and perform certain actions based on the different information entered by the user. This makes them really helpful and useful tool for the application where it is required to ask users to fill out some forms, update certain records, and guiding users through some step-by-step process. One good example here could be when you when you shop for a product on any online store where you ask certain information to the user, like you ask some of the basic information about the user, like the name, email or phone number, where the order will be delivered, the address. Then you ask for payment information on the next step. Once all the required information are entered by the user, we either show the confirmation message, or in case there is some issue, we show the error message. So those kind of user interaction related applications we can, or situations, we can consider Salesforce screen flows. I hope the purpose of Salesforce screen flow is now clear to you, and now let's get started with actual implementation in our Salesforce developer org. Of our first screen flow, we will be creating one contact input information flow where we will ask users to enter the first name, the last name and the email for a contact, and once the information is valid, we'll try inserting that record in the database. So let's begin. Since this is our brand new flow, I'll add an element, and as this is a screen flow where we will be asking user to enter some information, we first need to add a screen for creating our input form. So when I click on the add element, I'll look for the screen element, and this is our screen element which has couple of attributes that we have to configure. The first is the label attribute. This is the label of your screen, like what would you like to name your screen. So since we are creating a contact input information screen, we will label it like contact input form, since this will be a form where user can enter the information. And it is advisable to give proper names to your elements so that it becomes easy to understand for you when you later visit your flow, and as well as for other teammates in your team who may get a chance to work on your flows. So always develop a habit to name your elements properly so that it suggests its purpose. And the first thing is the label. I have given it, and if you have noticed that as long as I come out of this label field, the API name auto populated, and on this API name, every element will have an API name in Screen Flows or in Flows in general. So there is one like naming convention that we should be using while specifying the API names. It is that you should always be using a camel case. You wonder what a camel case is. It is nothing but where the first word of a name contains the smaller case and the subsequent word contains the first letter as the capital. Let me show you that. This is our name. So if we have to configure it in the camel case pattern, I'll make this contact small, I'll remove this underscore, and then this as well. So this contact input form, it is our 3-word API name where the first word contact has the first letter smaller case and rest of the words such as input and form has the first letter capital. This naming convention is called the camel case. So this is the naming pattern you should be using, or in general in other orgs people use some other naming conventions while naming the API names, but the camel case is most preferred one because it is the same naming convention which is used in other programming languages as well. But so this is the one tip that I wanted to give, and always focus on the naming convention that your team is using while developing the flows. So you have to follow that same naming convention policy to have the streamlined development process or strategy. So this is how I have configured the label and the API name for my screen element. Now, since I need to ask user to enter 3 things, first name, last name and email, I need 3 input boxes for to be added on the screen element. So here on the component side, there are 3 things that you can define. There is an input element that you can choose. I'm not finding that, so I'll use a quick search. Okay, it is named as text, not the input. So it is within the input category, but the type is text. So we have to use the text element, and I'm just showing you how you can create a flow from scratch using the custom input elements. So I drag and dropped this like text element. It is like developing a input form in HTML. Here you don't have to like code it, you just have to drag and drop the available elements. And again, I have I have created one input form. I have to configure certain properties for it. The first one is label. I'll name it as first name. Is it required? I think on the contact object only the last name is required, so we will keep it as is. User may wish to enter it or he may not wish to provide it. Whether it should be read only, no, I don't want to make it read only. Whether it should be disabled, no. Is there any default value that we wish to provide to this element? No, as such. User can enter whatever he wishes to. So this is my first name, and again here also I'll change the API name to camel case, and since this is an input element, I'll append the word input, first name input. So it will suggest to the users or who will develop after me that okay, this is an input element. Likewise, I'll drag and drop the another text element for the last name. I'll configure last name. Since the last name on the contact record is a required one, you have to configure it as required. And you see, the moment you make any text element required, an asterisk sign will appear here. And likewise, I don't configure anything else, and I'll add one more text element for the email. And since email is email has just one word, I will use all smaller cases as part of my naming convention policy. And I would like to mark the email as required too. So yeah, I'm done. I just created a screen element where I defined 3 input properties that I wish my users to enter, and then I think we are good. Once you are done with your changes, click on this done. I think it lagged a bit. Okay, it happened. Sometimes it lags. I don't know why. Since we have added our first element for the flow, it is like first step of our process. Let's save it, because we don't want to change lose our changes if something unexpected happens. So when you try to save your flow for the first time, it asks you to specify the label for it. So I'll give a meaningful label like long switch academy contact input screen flow. So always choose meaningful name for your flow, so they represent its purpose. So the name represents its purpose of the flow. Now here in the description, it is optional, but you should always define a description of the purpose of the flow. To allow users to quickly create contacts. We can reuse this screen flow at multiple places. So to streamline or quickly provide a way to users to create the contacts, I'll hit save. Okay, so my flow is saved. Let's debug it. I just want to see how my screen is appearing. So I'll click on this debug. It is loading. Yes, I want to run it. Here you go. This is the label that we gave to the screen element. This is our first name, last name, and the email fields that we have configured. I try to hit finish. You see, I had configured my 2 fields, last name and email, to be required. Since I haven't provided any value to it, so it is not accepting it. So it also supports some pre-configured validations when it comes to the data input. Let's go back to I hope you are following along and you are getting the idea how to create your first flow in Salesforce. I'll go to the flow. Now I have defined my form. User will enter some value to it. Next, what we have to do, we have to store that the value that user is entering into an record variable, so that we can insert the data in the database. For that, what I'll do, I'll use, for assigning a value to a variable, we have to use an assignment element. So I will choose an assignment and I'll give it a meaningful name. Assigning user input values to new contact record. Every time user uses our flow, he will create a new contact. Okay, the API name is again here, and as I suggested, we should always be using the same naming convention policy across the flow. So it looks good and it looks standard. And I'll keep this. Now we don't have any record variable, so we have to first create a record variable. Here in this button, new resource, you can create a new resource of type variable. That because we want to create a variable of type contact record, to assign these field values that user will be inputting, and then we have to like use that record variable to insert the data in database. So my variable will be new contact record. Here there are different types of resources that you can create, such as variable, constant, formula, text template, choice, collection choice set, and there are so many. But right now, since we just need variable, I'm choosing variable. So Salesforce Flow Builder offers you variety of resource types that you can create as part of your flow, and you can leverage it to the full potential to develop a well-defined, well-designed flow. And what would be the data type of our variable? It will be a record, because we want to create a contact record. So I'll choose a record as a data type, and these are our available options here. And in the object, what kind of record I want to create? I want to create a contact record. I'll choose contact. Here it also asks whether you want to create multiple contacts or a single contact, like single record or multiple record that you want to create. But since we are asking for one contact information only, so we will just be creating one contact record. So we will keep this allow multiple values and check. In case you have multiple records to deal with, you have to choose this allow multiple values collection checkbox for your variable. Once you are done with the configuration, hit done. And now I cannot assign value directly to a record, rather I can assign value to its field. So the new contact record has fields that we will use, such as first name, and this field will vary to the type of record variable that you are creating. For instance, if you are creating a variable of type contact, it will has all the fields listed from the contact object. If you are creating a variable of type account, it will have all the fields available from the account object. So I want to assign a value to a field, so I will use an equal operator, and from where I will be getting a value? I will be getting a value from the first name input. Remember, this name we gave to our input element for the first name on the screen element. Then I'll again choose new contact record, last name equals, then I'll choose, let me connect my charger. Okay, I'll choose last name. Okay, here you see I made a mistake. I didn't gave it a proper name, so I have to go back and correct it. Then new contact record email equals email. Once the assignment is done, you hit save, so that your changes are will get saved. Let's go back to our screen element. Go to the last name. We have to correct the name. It should be last name and input. The interesting fact here is, the moment you change it here, go to the assignment, it will automatically gets changed here. So you don't have to manually go and update it at all the referenced places. So it is also a cool feature of Salesforce Flow Builder. Okay, my assignment is done. Now what? I want to insert the data to the database. So I'll click here on the add element. I'll look for the data segment. If it is too long to scroll, you can search. I want to create records. So I want to create record. So create record element comes up. Give it a proper name. Insert. I will give it a new name like insert new contact in database. Okay. Again, I'll go and modify my API. I hope you are noticing that I am trying to follow the same naming convention across all the elements that I am using. With the small flows, you won't like recognize its importance, but when your flow becomes comparatively large and multiple people are working together on the same flow or as part of subflows, it is always advisable to have a one common naming convention across the flow elements. And here, how to set record values, whether you can manually specify the variable, or you can choose a record variable from your flow. Since we have already created a record variable, we'll choose this option. And third thing it asks is how many records you want to create. Since we are creating only one contact at a time, we will choose one, but if you have multiple contacts or multiple records to create, you can choose the multiple option. And the last thing that it asks for the collection of the record or the variable of the record from which you want to get the values. For us, it is just, since we just have one record variable, that is new contact record, I'll choose that. Once I'm done with this configuration, I'll hit save. So these are the basic steps. One important tip, and one, or you can consider it as a one pro tip: when you develop a flow that deals with the data, you should always specify a fault path. You wonder what is a fault path? Fault path is nothing but a statement that gets executed when anything goes wrong while you try to manipulate your data. Because as you understand, when we try to insert, update, delete our data, it might happen that some error occur or some validation fails, which prevents the data from getting updated in the backend, and your backend system throws the error. In those kind of situations, if you specify a fault path, a well-defined error message can be written to the user. So I hope that makes sense to you, and the next time you create any flow which deals with the data, you will not forget to add a fault path. So I will configure a fault path. So it will only be like executed when there is an error in the database, or when there is an error while trying to insert the contacts. In the fault path, I'll add an element which is a screen element, which will show us which will show us the error message that we are getting. I'll give it a label as DML operation error screen. You wonder what is DML? It is nothing but data manipulation language. Like as I'm a developer, I use this kind of naming conventions because I know that this create, update or delete statement fall under the category of data manipulation. So I'll give it more generic name here, but you can give more suggestive name as per your convenience, but it should be meaningful. It should convey the purpose of this screen. So I'll name it like this: DML operation error screen. Okay, now in this screen I want to show the error message. I want to display it. So for displaying, there is a component called display text. One important thing, there are so many useful components that Salesforce provides for the screen elements. When you get a chance, do explore each one of them. You will really like working with them, and you will find them handy in different use cases when you work extensively with the flows. So I'll use a display text, and I'll name it as error message component. And inside this body part, I want to display the error message. How would I get an error message? For that, I need to use a system variable called, or a global variable called flows, which contains some common information about the flows, such as at what time, what is the current time, current date, what is the fault message. This fault message is nothing but the error that occurs at any instance of time or at any point of time during the execution of the flow. And there are so many other options that you can explore. So I will use add fault message to display the error message to the user. Since this is an error, it should be some in danger in color, so I'll keep it as red color, and I'll mark it as done. Once I'm done with the changes, I'll click on that. So now in true sense my flow is completed. I'll save it. I hope you are liking the tips and the step-by-step tutorial that I'm showcasing to you, and it will eventually enable you to start creating your first flow. So keep learning and keep growing with us. And you can see that the power of giving proper names to your elements, they are looking really good, they are looking really professional. Let's debug it. It is loading. Yes, I want to run it. Let's try to create one contact with my name. My name is Shubham, my name is Prajapati, and I won't enter the email. And let's see what happens. Since I didn't provide the email address and it was marked as required, the validation error hit and it didn't allow us to go to the next screen. Let me provide the email address. I'll provide our official email address from our company. I'll hit next. Okay, there is nothing here, there is no errors, and which means our contact should have been created. Let's go to the home, look for the contacts. It is loading, and you see this was the contact that got created because this was the information that we had entered. Shubham Prajapati in the first name and last name, and email contact@longswitch.com as the email. So congratulations, you have created your first screen flow and you have successfully executed it. Do let me know in the comment section below what you feel about it. If you have any questions, any suggestions, or in general if you want to appreciate our efforts, do let us know in the comment section below. If we have missed something, or if we forget to cover as part of our initial guide, do let us know in the comment section. Your suggestions are always welcome, and we also try to improvise on our efforts to deliver the best content for you so that you can easily learn and grow with us. Thank you for watching. Do subscribe for more regular updates, and happy learning. Thank you.